as well. So in my virtual office. Hi, Kath. Good to see you all again. So let's do a double check while we're playing around with the technology here. So we've got in the room. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, Raj. So we've got Edwin there from Africa. We've got Sally from New Zealand. Tanguy from Europe.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Shandon. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good to see you again in our various workspaces. Kath sat in the gloom there. No, you're coming to light a little bit. That's a bit better. So can we all see each other there? Excellent. Yeah. Good. So just I'm going to recap and start over again. So welcome everybody. ACX Mentor week 3 of 4. Right. So we'll be 75% of the way there by the time we've completed today's session. And today's session is pivotal for anybody who's wanting to get into the world of process, customer experience, outside in doing business generally for the future. Is everything hinges around measurement, because it's frequently said that what you measure is what you get, and sometimes when we're not measuring the right things to achieve the sort of progress we want in an evolution in our organizations, to gear ourselves up for this post-COVID-19 world, as most of us go into sort of offices again and start meeting people and keeping social distancing and all that sort of stuff. So anybody watching this in a few weeks' time, you'll be wondering what the devil's he talking about? Well, he's talking about the experience we've all just had at the beginning of this year. So the whole idea of measurement is that we want to make it appropriate for what we're trying to achieve. And so often we've inherited measurement systems which were fit for purpose back in the day, but they perhaps don't serve their purpose anymore. So what I'm going to do now is go into our workspace. So can you see the Experience Manager's workspace there?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic, that's good. So as we can see, we've done week 1. We're well on the way to most of us completing that. Week 2, the same, and now we're in week 3. As I've said to one or two offline, don't worry if the exercises have been problematic, because some of us have had technical challenges, some have had social challenges, some have had challenges just trying to get access to some of the material. So the whole idea is that the exercises form the backbone for you to understand the material. But essentially, I think, as we've said before in the earlier weeks, is this isn't about necessarily teaching you too much new stuff. It's about you being in a position where you feel confident around the material. You can get access to all the material. And I'm going to specifically talk about the material you can access when we get into next week. And there's been various discussions going backwards and forwards about the format of the material and things like that. And again, I'll explain that as we run into week 4 next week. But safe to say this week, as I've already said, is measurement. A couple of quotes there. Another Einsteinism, many of us will be familiar with that. But some of us may not know this guy, H. Thomas Johnson. He's over in the States and he's at Portland University. And he is actually a management accountant, but he's also a systems engineer, so does a lot of systems design type work. And his quote is worth sort of throwing out there occasionally when you go into your board meetings and you're talking with top teams and things like that, is to get people's focus on measurement in the right way, not measurement in the way we did it in the past, but measurement in the way that those very progressive organizations and leaders already do. So to facilitate us doing that, we're going to talk about measurement from the outside in, and there's going to be an exercise. But let's have a look at our agenda there. We can see week 3, exercises review. So in a couple of minutes time, I'm going to open the floor, get some of the feedback from you. That's been really great stuff coming in, and it's great you've rolled your sleeves up and started playing inside the Experience Manager environment, albeit to many of us that's a new environment, but once you get the hang of it, it's like, as you saw last week, the whole session was actually run through the Experience Manager. We didn't even use one single PowerPoint slide, and that's quite an amazing thing to think about, isn't it? Imagine being in that situation where you don't need to rely on slides or PowerPoint to actually communicate your message. And that's the whole point of the Experience Manager environment. Is it's both a place where we can digitize all the work that we're doing, keep a store of it, share it, and ideate around it. And thank you very much for those people who've been allocating me tasks. That was very decent of you. I had to keep my finger on the pulse there. I nearly slipped up once or twice, but that was good. The other perspective on that as well is then being able to take those ideas and rank them against Triple Crown benefits. And as we'll see next week, I'll show you some of the ideas that have come in over the last few weeks. And thanks, keep them coming to try and improve the experience manager, because it's our environment. It's the environment we're all beginning to work in much more. And it's much more fluent than having, say, for instance, PowerPoint documents, Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, some sort of cloud storage, which is difficult to get hold of depending on our bandwidth restrictions and things like that. What the Experience Manager gives us is a community space where we can share experiences with others, or we can just keep them to ourselves. So I'll just drop out of this for a minute, and you'll see in terms of the ACX, what my sort of environment looks like at the moment in the context of doing the ACX Mentor program. So I've got the workbook, which is down here, dragged down here as well, just as an aid for people. Some of the work that I've been doing previously, the actual mentor program itself. So as I'm developing themes for the program, once I've got the themes and I'm happy with them, I can then, as you know, drag down the program into our open workspace. And this is what you guys can see. So you can see the ACX Mentors thing, the COIM, Certified Outside In Masters program, and then the workbooks. So of course, if we drop into the ACX Mentors program, we can then see our week 1, 2, and as we say, we're in week 3 now. So let's go back in there. So once you get used to the navigation, it's pretty straightforward. So we're going to do the exercises review, then we'll talk about measurement. And what I've done there is I've taken a big chunk of the deck that we cover off at the ACX and the CPP Masters level, and included it, one by way of, reminding you of some of the stuff that's in there, but the other of saying that measurement isn't just a singular thing. There's many different measures we can put in place. Some people get to rely on 1 or 2 things, which is fine, but as we'll see, some of the measures that are fairly dubious, not within the context of outside in, but some of the measures which drive organizations are causing us to do the wrong thing. So one of the areas I'm going to cover off there is a mini case study. I'm going to swing us round to a case study that Capital One presented to us a few years ago. And that's case in point for some of the problem there. So some of you will recall that case study being used before. So I've brought it up today, and it's going to be in the deck for you. And we've also got the return on experience investment mechanism now. So one of the things that people who've been through the Accredited Customer Experience Specialist Program with James Dawkins will have seen is there is a way of actually attaching, in a similar way to return on investment, what's the return on the experience? And how do we do that calculation? So we've got a video there that we'll watch offline, but there's then a link to a bunch of material where you get a spreadsheet where there's a case study in the spreadsheet, but also you can then access the formulas and begin to play with it yourself. We're using that quite extensively now, so it's a new area. None of you, except for the ACXS people in the last couple of weeks, will have been exposed to that. I think, Lyle, you've just been through the ACXS program, so you probably saw a snippet of James talking about that.
Yes, I did. It's a really useful, let's call it prepackaged business case, benefits case tool that allows you to, with the right assumptions, the right inputs, come up with a first pass at what the financial impact of an experience improvement initiative could be. So I think I really like it.
Good. I'll let James have that feedback. It's one of those things where over the years, of course, we've gathered together lots of different measures of success that the leading organizations are doing. But the biggest difficulty a lot of people have, particularly around talking about customer experience, is justifying an investment around it. And the measures that we've got at the moment, the ones we've inherited, the traditional measures, are either retrospective or too subjective, or they're not credible in the eyes of the leadership team. And as much as we say things like NPS and customer satisfaction and customer effort score, and there's a plethora of others like that, should have credibility, the fact they don't means that as soon as we're using those to justify a case for change, we're on a very sticky wicket. So we've got to sort of mind meld, if you like, with leadership teams and understand that the way they're measuring success and the way they're measured themselves for 99% of organizations is still very much the same way. And it is one of the reasons, as we've discerned with colleagues in the CX space particularly, why big CX programs will fail, is because they're not actually aligning themselves to the existing measurement systems and then pushing that measurement system into the future. What they're trying to do is deliver change in the context of old measurement systems. So when we think of old measurement systems, what's the difference? Well, it really boils down to all the stuff we talk about when we're talking about the industrial age versus the customer age. And in the industrial age, we measured things around production. We measured things to do with throughput and efficiency and effectiveness. And that was very good for allowing us to build the economies, to build industries, to build out supply chains and so on like that. But as those shifted and the customers have become promiscuous and professional consumers, they've become very fickle and they're not very loyal anymore. And this is in any environment. So when people say to me, oh yeah, I'm in public sector, Steve, that doesn't affect me. Of course it affects you, because the people you're dealing with have these expectations of you that they never had before. And those expectations aren't informed by you, they're informed by all our experiences as citizens and clients of the world in terms of what we think is good service and what isn't. So what happens classically is that organizations start to say, oh, we've got to get more productivity, we have to improve efficiency and effectiveness, and they're still looking at it through that production mindset lens. Whereas the shift, as we've all experienced, is to say, no, let's articulate the outcome, let's be really specific about what we're delivering as a successful customer outcome. If we can identify metrics to that and then align the organization to those metrics, a lot of the other stuff we're doing may not be necessary anymore. And in that way, of course, as we know, you significantly can reduce costs because you remove complexity. You'll improve throughput, right? And if you're in a revenue generating situation, you'll grow revenues. And ironically, cost, revenue, and service are the three things that the top team would very much agree with in terms of being aspirational targets. Well, you guys can do it in spades now. But we need a framework for that. So I'm going to reintroduce that framework later. We'll talk a little bit about dashboarding. James, as I say, has got his return on experience investment video. And in a few moments' time, after we've just done a quick review of the exercises, I'll drop into the case study, the Capital One case study, which highlights the point very significantly. And it's a nice, simple explanation of how by measuring the wrong things now causes us to give suboptimal service, and yet we may be still praising ourselves for coming in against our measures. So that's part of the irony and part of the paradox of doing this, is that organizations will say they're successful because they're meeting the measurement targets, whereas they're actually failing in the eyes of the customer. And they don't have any way of measuring that other than flaky systems like Net Promoter Score and customer satisfaction and things which are indicators. They're not scientific enough. So that's a quick overview of what we're going to be getting through today. But before we do that, the exercises. Thanks very much, guys, for submitting your materials. Again, if you're having challenges with the Experience Manager, don't get hung up about that. Just bang them in a Word document, on a spreadsheet, or even on the back of a cigarette packet. Just sketch them out, take a photograph of it, and WhatsApp it over to me. That sort of way, and then I can review for you. Now, I'm not reviewing whether it's right or wrong. I'm reviewing whether we're in the right space of understanding, because if subsequently we're going to go out and we're training this ourselves, we need to be able to answer the questions that people are naturally going to come up with. So having a sort of clear line of sight on, yeah, I've really got to fix on when I get to those smart measures in a SCOC in box number 7. I've done that several times now, so that's fairly easy for me, so I can explain it. I'm not going to be out on a limb every time somebody gets there and says, well, what do you mean smart? What's that all about? I've got some examples already, and that's very much the point of it. Now, with your permission, I'm not going to ask online to give me your permission or not, because that might be a bit embarrassing if you don't want to do. But what I will do is offline is ask you to say, can I share your exercises with other people who are in the ACX Mentor space? again, not to critique each other's, but to see other examples and other perspectives of the same work. Last week, we had a short preview of the work Shandon was doing by way of an example. So thanks for that. So he managed to get himself out of the exercises this week because we'd already done it. Well done, Shandon. That was a good tactic. That I thought, oh, that was clever. Let me submit mine first, and then I'll get ahead of the game, and then I won't have to do any more work on it. That's good stuff.
I wish I could have thought that way.
No, but it was good. So what I'm just going to do is over here on, let me move on my screen here at the moment. I've got all the people you'll see on the recording. It pops up in the wrong place sometimes. So over here on the top right of the Experience Manager sort of workspace, there's a number of things. That one is the one, of course, where tasks are allocated and done. So again, thank you for allocating me tasks, guys. I really appreciate that. As if we don't have a mountain of work to do already, but that's great. And over here, this little bell icon tells you who's invited who to what. In my context, of course, it's going to look different for you because it depends on who you've invited to your workspace. So the question I'm asking is, number one, do you want to share your workspace? If you want to do that, invite the other people in the group. So what I'll do is I'll give you, again, a list of all the people who are in the group. And if you go in and actually have a look at your own, if I wanted to invite somebody to a sort of another thing, so let's drop out of this, let's come back into one of the other experiences. So let's go into CM method update. So most of you should have received the invite for this. So you can see there's a button here, invite to workspace. So if I click on that button, then what I can do here is enter somebody's name. So if I said Mitch's name gets mentioned a lot. So any name I type in there that's within this, the Experience Manager ecosystem can be brought into that particular workspace. So in this instance,
can you put my name in these, Steve?
You've been in several, into this particular one. Yeah, I'll do that now. So so I want to invite several people. So it says, oh, you're trying to have multiple emails. Is this correct? Yeah, I think so. So let's put Sally. No, let's not put Sally. Let's go with that one first. So we'll invite Mitch. I've already, for the development guys who are, as some of you know, are based out in Eastern Europe, in Romania, I've broken this system several times. So if you think navigating around it is interesting, you should be in Steve Towers' shoes, where I can really break these systems. So there's Sally, for instance. And Sally's got two logins. One of her logins is obviously the work one. And that can be problematic sometimes for some organizations, particularly, say, for instance, in the Middle East, where security is prized. So in the banking environment, for instance, we install the Experience Manager onto their own servers. So there is a way of doing that. So if somebody says, look, we don't want to operate with the cloud. The cloud is like, it's insecure as far as we're concerned. We are working in secure environments. So as is Sally, she's working in a secure environment. I won't say where. It's probably obvious from the email there. Sometimes those environments prevent certain information getting through. The firewalls prevent it, the spammerators prevent it. So it gives people on the inside of those organizations challenges in communicating with the external world, other than in an official capacity. So as you can see in this instance, we added Sally's second email, a personal email, which should give her access. So now I'm going to invite Sally's, that email. Is that one okay, Sally?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Fantastic. And I'll say, just to prove this works, and you should immediately get a message and an invite.
Yeah. Steve, will you send one for me? Because I can't see it either.
Okay.
Thanks.
Let it just cycle through. And what it does, it goes away and checks the email, make sure the email's a legitimate one. And then from that point of view.
Milne Kath, no. M-I-L-N-E. No, yeah. Yeah.
Are those okay?
Yeah.
So
they're both the same, yeah, they're good.
Yeah, good. So let's just click on one. And it picks up the email from the original time you were invited to any of the Experience Manager ecosystem. All right. So if you find somebody's, you go to put them in, you say, put Steve Towers in, and he's not there. You know, Steve Towers is email that he's using at the moment that he said it's okay to use. So like stevetowers@gmail or steve.towers@bpgroup.org. So it's as easy as that to invite people. And then when you invite them, what happens is that whatever you've created for them, in this instance, the annual CM method update, and I know a couple of the ACX mentors to be, like Molly, for instance, went through this program. So when you actually watch the video, which is embedded within, let's have a look, so you can have a look. When you start to delve into here, of course, there's the usual videos that you can access. And when you get over on the wrap-up side, there's the complete video of the full thing. So I'm going to click on it now, but of course the bandwidth will cause it to flutter. But when you're in there, and what you'll see is the folks who attended the actual CM method update, which was earlier on this year, are there on the screen. I have to stop saying that. Let's see. So there you
Steve, that was one of my queries, because I attended it online with you, but it had disappeared for some reason. I don't know.
maybe bandwidth, Kath.
Maybe
you know,
I had 2 logons or something.
Yeah, perhaps it may well be. And
Because my name was in there twice. So
yeah, that's
maybe
right. And that
maybe I
means
had 2
that
logins.
yeah. And I think I've mentioned that, for instance, if Sally logged in with a secure login, she may not get access, whereas accessing it through the personal login. So it's one of those things where we're putting the mechanisms in place now to make sure that the emails that we're using for the people, when people get into the system, are the ones that they want to use when they're using the system. And it really depends on your usage. Are you behind a firewall or a secure system? Do you want access in a different way? And in Sally's example, for instance, this is not an unusual request, and we've done this, is install the experience manager onto the servers of the organizations we're working with. Now, immediately do that, you get a number of benefits. Is one, obviously, it's secure to you, and it can be constrained in terms of the data that you're actually putting in there isn't up there in the cloud. And that could be a major concern for many organizations, even though all the security protocols around Dropbox and those, you know, the Google Drive space and things like that are more than adequate and have passed all the relevant tests. You know, if you think it's good enough for the American military, it must be good enough for most of us. But even so, there's a natural sort of, oh, what about the risk of a break-in or whatever? So with that in mind, it can be installed in terms of an enterprise server in the organization. Most organizations won't get that far straight away. It takes them, you know, it's going to take them 6 months to get into it. But when you get to that point where you're saying, okay, we want to roll this out across the enterprise, that question will arise, and it's a question that we've addressed. So as some of you know, we work with folks in the Middle Eastern area, and particularly Saudi Arabia. Any organization in Saudi Arabia has to have this installed on their own servers. So let's come out the CM method update. Molly will be looking at herself there thinking, oh, I'm watching a recording of this, but they're talking about me already. So there you go, Molly. Hi. So close that one down. So as you can see, the method update goes through, and the measurement pack we're going to do some of today is also featured within the annual update. The whole point of the annual update is that it's for people who are certified process professionals, accredited customer experience specialists or professionals or masters, and latterly they're certified outside in masters as well. So it's a place where we do this annual update, and normally it's just a webinar, but we built it into the experience manager, so you can dive in here, take them. So if we go into customer performance landscape, descriptions of examples, pain points, stuff like that. Occasionally you'll see documents in here as well. And to the point about questions we were asked about putting PowerPoint documents in this environment, that's great, but as we all know, those PowerPoint documents can get humongously big, right? So the natural thing to do there is to have the PowerPoint document hosted locally, right? But initially when you're accessing it through the system, you'll find it's all PDFs. Now, as I've asked the question on the WhatsApp group, who wants the PowerPoints on a USB? Now, that will only be available to the people who qualify through the coaching or the mentoring program. It's not available generally to everybody. The reason for that is the slides contain builds, and they contain information which we've had to get permission to actually use on behalf of other organizations. Now on a PDF slide, yeah, it's great. You can see what the final slide looks like. But if you're doing a build, there might be a narrative in there which talks about how an organization did it. Okay, so the PowerPoint documents themselves also have the embedded videos, and videos of themselves can be very large. So we have made PowerPoint documents available in the past through the Experience Manager, but we found the whole experience is like, oh, this isn't working. So PDF is the go-to place. For yourselves as coaches and mentors, you can access any of the material we've got, and I'll talk about this more specifically next week, via PowerPoint, because you'll need those things to actually run this material yourself. Fantastic. Good. So let's get back to the discussion there. So you can see I've got a number of different workspaces over here. I'm running a workshop this week, which for anybody watching this as a recording is going to be too late, but it'll be up there as well, on innovating innovation. So some of you may be seeing on a LinkedIn feed an invite to that. If you want to come along, that's fine. I've done it at a Sydney friendly time. It's 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon for the guys in Sydney. All right. So everybody else around the world is in the strange situation that our Antipodean friends are normally in, is why are you putting it on at that time? I'll be in bed. And you go, oh, there's a globe out there. There's a world of people, right? So we're trying to do justice to that. And actually that innovation thing will only be 45 minutes. And at the end of it, it's basically a pitch to get people into the Certified Outside In Masters program. But what innovation will do is talk through what you guys have experienced, is taking moments of truth and innovating them, just as we can do within the Experience Manager. Is how do we take a current state and how do we come up with ideas against those moments of truth in the current state, and then how do we eradicate those moments of truth to move to a new state? And I think case in point there, somebody who's done that very recently is Raj, who's just gone through that cycle in his own organization a few weeks ago, where he took, I think, what was it, Raj, 44 moments of truth down to 8? It was something of that order of magnitude. Now, by definition, as we say often, is if you're reducing the number of moments of truth, the number of interactions you have with your customers, your clients, your citizens, all the complexity that was associated with the old stuff may not be necessary anymore. Of course, that may be a challenge in itself in terms of, well, what do we do with all that surplus capacity? Well, we use it for doing more good stuff, hopefully. Also, in terms of throughput, you're able to do things, and we see this a lot in pharmaceutical, is where they'll take cycle times of 9 or 10 years, down to 6 months. And in our COVID-19 world, that's pretty important to us. For when the next pandemic comes along, how quickly can we get, something which can help people? Rather than waiting 9 years. And I think when that happened in the Middle Ages, a third of the world's population had died by the time the actual virus thing had run its course. And well, hey ho, on that cheery note, let's move on. So let's dive back into ACX Mentors. And what I would like to do is visit just one of the, let's have a look at this. Lyle, do you mind if I share this? Are you good? Fantastic. Let's drop into Lyle. So Lyle invited me to his workspace, and here you can see Lyle's. He's not put any artwork in there yet, but that's okay. That'll come with time. I get really creative about these things depending on the organization I'm in. So
focus on the content, Steve.
I'm so typically Gemini. I get so distracted so easily, and I'll find I've got 16 tabs open. And I can't remember what the first thing was I was intended to do when I opened the first tab. So it's just the way it is. So as Lyle's done, he's created his environment here in terms of, E is the customer, if you remember. So what industry are you in? So the OSIM version 1, where does the process start and finish? What are the main touch points? What does success look like? And as some of you guys have done is you've used a piece of paper and you've drawn it on a piece of paper, or you actually did PowerPoint slides and then you took a photograph, or you embedded the graphic file into these windows. So whichever way you or the organization you're working with prefers to work is what we say is standardizing around that. Now, the good news for all of us is in a very short period of time, there's 2 additions coming into the Experience Manager, right? One of those additions is around templates. So specific templates around industries, templates around types. So for instance, one of the templates we've been working on in the last couple of weeks is a template around project management. So we've used standard Project Management Institute parlance to actually create a bed of templates which fit in with the whole cycle of running projects. And the templates are just there already in the system, so you don't have to go in there and create them. Do I like creating them? No, not necessarily. I like using them. So I tend to stick with the OISM template, the SCOC template, and the NSAT template as well. So as you can see on this one, Lyle then did a version 2, and there's the SCOC as well. I'm not going to go through this in detail. It's not necessary to do so. But when we're looking again at the SCOC and we ask, what are the real needs? The measure of that, of course, is that these are binary, they're yes and no. So let's just put Lyle on the spot here. Within 2 months, find a way to help current clients specifically with CX evolution. That is a yes and a no. So that is a very good, smart measure. You know, that is something that we could say that if you had a measurement system for yourself, if that's on your dashboard, every single day and week, you're looking at that saying, okay, it started off as 2 months, it's 4 weeks now, it's 3 weeks, it's 2 weeks. Have I actually done that? Right. So to enable that, we put the task management system within the experience manager, and then there's some additional features which will be coming in, which you'll begin to see start populating. And what I'll do with all you guys, it's not the end of our conversation again when we get to week 4 next week. What I'll be doing with you guys is doing a periodic call when we need to. It's not going to be like, oh, every week we've got to get on that call again. It's when we need to, is I'll host a call and invite everybody who's gone through the ACX mentorship program and talk about the new features and how you can use them. There's some very powerful things in there. So if you use any tools like Smaply for drawing processes and things like that, there's a whole bunch of them out there. And what we don't want to do is duplicate functionality, but we want to integrate work that people are doing in different environments so that they can pull it into the experience manager. And when they do the work on that, it goes back out into those environments. You don't have to be chopping and changing between PowerPoint and Word and Excel and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so thank you, Lyle, for letting me share that. Thanks, Shandon, for doing your bit, a couple of weeks ago. The exercises this week are relatively painless because they're going to be a review in the pack, because we're not going to have enough time today to go through that sort of full deck. But are there any questions on exercises before we move back into the main agenda item, which is measurement?
Steve, it's Kath here. So I have attempted them in Experience Manager. I did that just maybe an hour before we came live. Is there a way of downloading them once I've put them in there?
In the sense of what I do is I basically take screenshots. It's not going anywhere. Yeah. It's there and it's accessible. When you're saying download, what do you mean? Just download the template that you've created and say your SCOC, for instance.
Just a completed one.
Yeah, I mean it's like the analogy there is like it's a PowerPoint document. It's there for you when you go back in again. So when we have a PowerPoint document, it can either be local or it can be up in the cloud. At the moment, as I've said, this is in the cloud, but if you're working in an enterprise environment where you want it installed locally, then it will be on the local servers as well. So it's entirely accessible that way.
So what I had done is I'd done like the OSIM and the North Star and stuff like that. And I just thought, oh, I wouldn't mind just having a logo, so download it onto my computer rather than have it in Experience Manager, because there might be times when it's not appropriate for me to actually be online.
Yeah.
But I just look at it offline and I couldn't find a button to download. I found the button to edit and save, but I couldn't find a button to download. So then I went into post an idea, but it wouldn't let me post an idea until I tagged someone. And for the life of me, I didn't know how to tag somebody. So.
Okay, let's cover off that comes under innovation. So say for instance on week 3, which is where we are now. So over on innovation. And what you'll see, it'll throw up a screen here is, I put up an idea. This was an idea I put into the stream yesterday And at this stage, I've only invited Doug, who's the CEO of the Experience Manager, and Mitch, you know, the Mitch being the effectively the CIO. So one of the ideas I put in is you can say, when you enter an idea, the person to whom it's assigned, right, blah, 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 you can read that offline. But say I want to put another idea in. So I click the idea button, all right. Now, as you said, this area tags. Tag the name of the experience, stage, or people this idea references. So say, for instance, I want to share an idea with Lyle. So I'll type Lyle there, and Lyle's name will pop up, okay. Likewise, I could do the ACX Mentor. Right. So what that will do is find all the people who are associated with that. So Tanguy, Edwin's in the mentors workbook and so on. So is that okay?
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah.
And just while I'm unmuted, I'm leaving in 20 minutes because it's my birthday on Thursday. We're going out for dinner this evening. So.
Oh, good. Happy Gemini.
More than 10 minutes to look beautiful, okay?
As you guys know, it was my birthday last Monday. So we had our own little celebration, and everybody said, why did you move the session from Monday to Tuesday? And as Penny, my wife, said to me, is you're not going to be doing any work on the Monday, are you? And of course I said, no plans at all. So there you go. So all the Geminis in the room, yay. All right. So as you can see, the other thing to say about tags as well is if we go back into that one that I put up there yesterday, when you're creating a tag, it'll prompt you for what are the benefits of it. So let's just, for the sake of argument, put a tag in here and sort of say, let's do ACX Mentor again. So ACX Mentor program. So that's one of the tags. Now, who do I want to share that with? I want to share it with you all. So I could type all the names in, or I could type a group in. But for now, I've just put, let's see if Shandon's there.
Steve, it's AN.
Yeah, sorry. So I'm going to share this with you. Now, the title might be local download of, I shouldn't do TEM. I get told off for calling it TEM. The Experience Manager, Steve. So local download of TEM, right, question mark. Right. Write your idea. Would be great to be able to do this. Acknowledge Kath in Oz. Okay. So if that happens, Kath, you'll know the reason why now. Now, if we were able to implement that in this experience, not just within the Experience Manager environment, but against this experience of the ACX Mentor, will that improve service? Will it reduce costs in terms of the experience? And will it grow revenue? Well, we all recognize those as triple crown. Well, I think it's going to improve service, right? It's not going to reduce cost. It would probably significantly increase cost if people stored things locally, because then what you have is, it's rather like saying, can I download Oracle Financials locally? And you go, well, if it's on your local server, it already is. No, I want to take it with me on the train. And you go, no, that's going to be prohibitively dangerous and potentially, you know, quite expensive in terms of having all the protocols on one device to be able to do that. Now, of course, this isn't Oracle, but the same process thinking goes into that. So it wouldn't reduce costs. So we're not going to highlight that. Would it increase revenue? Oh, perhaps no. So we got improved service. None of these other two. However, if we did say it did do the other two, automatically you get a little flag which comes up triple crown. Now we kept that measurement focus really around those three elements, and there will be more in the future, like as we talk about triple crown plus, right? And as we've just said, if we have templates for certain environments, so say we have templates for defense organizations, Sally, there might be some things which from a strategic importance, your projects, your experiences always have to click that button. So are we being, you know, does this meet our innovation objectives for the next 12 months? And there might be you be able to customize that. So it'll have innovation or something like that. So what you'll be able to see is this alignment to the strategic objectives of the organization, not only from a triple crown, which is the fundamental, are we winning the triple crown every time? It's more, can we customize it locally? So that of itself is an idea. Now, would that improve service? Definitely. Would it reduce costs? Yes, it would, because we wouldn't have to do some extra legwork then in actually putting other things on into this. which may not be necessary for that your organization. So I think that's the whole point. Is this is completely customizable environment, and so you can
So
add
is
it.
that,
Yep,
is
please.
that idea already there? The idea to be able to configure your own Triple Crown Plus values.
Yes, it is. It is. But do
Oh, cool.
do feel free to put it in there again. And then what we're doing is amongst the people, the ACX Mentor, there's a group of development people who are champions as well, who've been invited into the environment. And I got the beta version last year before we released this in January. Right, so I said we've released this is because I've been collaborating so much with these guys recently. From that point of view, any ideas that you get like that you're not seeing surface, the more we all share those ideas. So as you experience this environment, and that's a good idea, Kath, but at the same time, I know that will get kicked into touch because we'll say, yeah, we could develop that capacity, Kath, but it's going to cost you 100,000 Aussie dollars. And Kath will go, let me think about that. I've got dinner in a few days' time. I think that takes a priority over the other $100,000. So, but you get the idea. Now, no idea is going to be a bad idea. And
Is there the ability to vote on other people's ideas?
Absolutely. So if we have a look at this one, my idea, it's a brilliant idea. Nobody's upvoted it yet.
Yep.
But
okay.
if I invited you into that thinking, which I think I will, because I'll get more upvotes than anybody else if all the ACX mentors vote for this, right? You'll be able to click the upvote button there, and I've upvoted myself. Well, that was very sort of altruistic of me, wasn't it? You can also downvote the idea. You can also, I like this feature as well, is you can put an idea in here and be anonymous. So if you think, oh my goodness me, we're doing something really bad in our organization at the moment, but I don't want anybody to come and beat me up when I sort of draw attention to it, you can put your idea in not as you, but as anonymous, right? So if they know you're right, then obviously they'll be able to discern who it is. So you have to make it sufficiently ambiguous that it's not necessary to do that. But the same sort of way, you can follow an idea. So how is my idea doing? How many upvotes, downvotes is it getting across the organization? So if I click follow, whenever there's any changes, anybody goes into this idea and looks at this idea, we'll be able to sort of do it and then comment. Now, this pops up in the analytics engine as well. There's this tab up here where you'll see how many of the ideas are coming in, how many are getting upvoted, downvoted, who's following them, right? Who hasn't been in and had a look at the idea. So when you're doing that task management thing, is one of the ways of calibrating against that is that rather than have a really comprehensive, complex task management system, is just have a look in the analytics engine. So if we pop over to the analytics engine, this will probably fall flat on my face because we haven't connected anything into the ACX Mentors program directly. Let's have a look. We can, however, see an analytics piece which shows us so any team ideas come in, how many views have there been, what are the ideas that are being contributed, and what are the improvements that have been implemented, and we can turn any of these things on and off. Now just trying to think. What I'll do is I'll show you one next week, which is one of the programs I'm running at the moment, and you can see what happens is you get a graph on here which represents these different elements. And then you can drill down into the different elements to see what are the ideas, what are the views, what are the improvements, and so on. So you can see it's a very comprehensive environment. You don't need to use all this functionality. But the whole idea is that in one space, you can capture a current state. You can then begin to come up with suggestions against the current state through ideation, right? You can then begin to sort of implement those changes, and through the analytics engine is monitor the progress of that implementation. And then when you've got a go live, what we would call future state, but there really isn't a current state and a future state, there just is now. So in the now environment, where are we against the targets that we've set against those metrics? And likewise, we can look at performance. We can look at it through a team view. So how's the team doing? You've got all these. So what I suggest you do is if you've got a little bit of time, just have a play around with this. And now you've started putting things in there yourselves, is have a look in that context of, well, how would I measure the success of that? Well, that's those SCOT measures, isn't it? So are we getting ideas against those SCOT measures about how we might improve them? So Lyle says, within 2 months. I don't think he should target himself for 5 weeks there. So I'm going to put an idea in place which sort of says, Lyle, pull your socks up. 5 weeks is going to be better than 2 months, right? that type of thing. Right? And what it does is engage a conversation around the actual work that we're doing. Does that make sense? Now, I didn't intend this to be an overview of the ACX Mentors experience, manager experience, but that's where we are. So let's just do a time check. Yeah, we're doing okay. So let's drop in there. So anybody else want any comments about the actual exercises themselves? No, we're good. Fantastic. And Kathy, if we don't say it before you disappear offline, have a lovely dinner. Do enjoy your birthday. Okay. And we'll see you gamefully in week 4.
Thanks ever so much. And I would just like to acknowledge Shandon, because I looked at his example and it really helped me set myself up. So I just wanted to acknowledge that before I go shortly. Thank you.
Great. And as I've said, guys, in terms of your own experience, I'll remind you of the people who are actually in the ACX Mentors program. That's all open to us. If you want to invite people into your experience, do that. You know, have them come along. They can see those as examples. The whole point of this is we're learning from each other. There isn't anybody who has the 100% view on what is good outside in practice and CX. The whole idea is that we can collaborate in this sort of a space, share ideas, and just as we've always said with the CM method and latterly with the SEO method, is with those two vehicles, the only way they improve is by taking the best practice, next practice of organizations, codifying it, and then putting it into an accessible space, which in our context is the CM method and the SEO method, and increasingly will be through the experience manager as well. Okay, good. So are we ready to move on into measurement 2020? All right, I'm going to change work environment now. Now let's see if this can actually work. This has nothing to do with me and everything to do with Zoom. So let's come over here. Let's have a look and see if move my happy window of people again. One of the improvements I've suggested to Zoom, by the way, is I don't know how many of us are using these Zoom sessions, but you get a little window, you can turn it on and off, and you can see who's in the room and who isn't in the room. Well, there should be some way of actually curtailing, so you can see somebody who's in the room, but you don't necessarily have to see the video, and you can lock it to a part of your screen, so it doesn't keep getting in the way of the other stuff you're trying to do. So that's just sharing some of Steve's sort of burgeoning team of ideas. Let's have a look. So ACX Mentor case study. So oftentimes when you're in a situation of trying to justify the whole measurement thing, it can become quite awkward because people get very hooked into their own measures. So can we all see something which is a PowerPoint slide there which says measurement case study? No. Right, let's stop that share and then let's start share again. Share screen, Steve. So it's that one. Right, should see an orange screen there now. Yay, good stuff. So it should be more fluent than that, shouldn't it, when we're using Zoom, do you think? You know, if you move off sharing one screen to move in another screen, you shouldn't have to stop sharing that screen to come out. The system should understand, but that's another point. So here we go. So some of you may recall this case study. It's a few years old now, but it's really case in point about how measurement of the wrong things may cause us to have the wrong behavior. So let me move this screen again. Get that out of the way. There you go, over there. So this is Capital One, and we're allowed to use this case study. And the question they're asking themselves, are we the management driving customers away? So as it says, the kicker is why doing what appears to be all the right things results in suboptimal customer experience. So if you're looking at Capital One as a financial investment, they're pretty good performance, and they have been for what, since they formed in 1995. So for 25 years, they've outstripped the sort of market performance generally. Got associates all over the world, in the States, in Europe. I'm not aware of how they are in Australia at the moment. I know they were setting up some offices in Australia, but I think probably 2008 saw fit to pull their horns in a little bit then and sort of weather that storm. but nevertheless, they're a global organization now, so financially pretty good. Also some historic figures from when they started out, and that curve, sorry, the figures are all over the place. It's the PowerPoint slides and fonts. Is those figures carried on into, you know, the last 15 years or so. In terms of great place to work, they were already winning awards at the turn of the decade, 2001, 2003, as you can see there. Otter did survey results. So back 20 years ago, they were surveying all the call center agents and things like that. Do you like working for Capital One? Good questions to ask of the employees. And in that instance, yes, they were. And are we doing the best for our customers? How do we improve ourselves? So we've just been talking about innovation and improvement. So what we'd identify is that we've got some challenges here: poor customer knowledge, low skilled staff, too much work, insufficient control. So where the employees are identifying problems and challenges, and then we're coming up with different ways that we could actually fix those things. But the question I would ask in the context of this case study is, what's missing from all those challenges and problems?
The customer's
The
view.
customer's
Yeah,
problem,
great.
the customer's
Great
view.
spot. There's nothing about the customer. So we can go about fixing all those things, but have we actually moved the dial in terms of delivering customer success? So in the context of today, outside in becoming customer centric, back what we were doing in 2004, and many organizations, I'm afraid to say, are still doing this type of thing, is the measures are not guiding their behaviors to deliver successful customer outcomes. So if we have a look at that, our inside processes are a cause of waste, and they exist because of the way we think about the design and management of work. Our work and management design is based on production management principles in this context, right? It's not aligned to delivering successful customer outcomes. So how does that play out? So we did a number of examples with them, and we said, okay, what is a common, and on the deck that you'll get, guys, it's a later version than this, so all the fonts have been fixed, so don't worry about the screwy nature of PowerPoint here this morning. The PDF version, the fonts are already fixed. So let's have a look. So one of the typical things that happens with credit card companies, which is where Capital One originally came from before they became a large financial services company, is that people will take out a credit card and they'll use it for a period of time, and then it falls into disuse, right? Also, people take out a credit card for a period of time. So say there's an offer on, and then when the offer ceases, they'll stop using it at that point. So they'll close the card down. So you'll recall when we were talking about the enlightened customer in some of the other trainings, one of the comments there is around customers have become too promiscuous. Everybody remember that? So when we were thinking about promiscuity, where did that come from? Well, it was the credit card industry which sort of coined the phrase originally. And one of the senior directors there said, Steve, the biggest problem we've got is customers. Yeah, I've heard that before. No, seriously, is what happens is we'll do a 0% interest rate product offer around the credit card for 12 months. You don't have to pay any interest. And then you know what happens after 12 months? You know what those customers do? They leave. They'll go with anybody else. They don't care about us anymore. They don't care about our feelings. They'll just go with anybody, right? Customers have become promiscuous. So we focused on that when we were originally helping them to actually sort of say, well, how does that manifest itself? And why do you think that your measurement system isn't aligned with customer success? So here's case in point. So somebody phones in and says, I'd like to close my account, please. Right. So, oh, well, okay. I can't close your account at the moment because you'll need a settlement figure. Oh, okay. What's the settlement figure then? I'd like to close my account. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't give you that information over the phone. I'll get the settlement figure to you. We'll send you an email and a letter. It takes about 7 to 10 working days because we're very busy at the moment. You understand, with everything that's happening, we're really busy. Okay. Well, I don't want to wait for that. I just want to close the debit card right now because I don't want to pay any interest or any outstanding charges or anything. So I just want to close my account with my debit card. Well, I'm sorry, we don't take debit card payments. You'll have to wait for the settlement figure to arrive, and then you can pay by one of the methods shown on your statement. Is there anything else I can help you with? No. All right. Now, that was, in various forms, a very typical dialogue. Now, of course, Capital One fixed this fairly quickly back in the day, but we still go in talking with somebody the other day, and they said, where does most of your revenue stream come from? And I go, it's old time organizations still discovering that they're old time, right? Bringing them up to speed. And this is exactly, so if you go in the call center and one of the primary measures in there is average handle time, they're a victim of this thinking. Right? They haven't updated themselves to become outside in. So do you recall when we've done the metrics in the past, we've talked about one of the audits you can do is say to an organization, okay, what are your 100 most important KPIs across the enterprise? Right. And Sally, you could probably do this because defense is very good in terms of KPI management and stuff like that, metrics. And when you have a look at those metrics, we color coded them. So we color code anything which is just a measure of throughput and output in red. I color code anything which is a measure of customer achievement, customer outcome in green. And fairly typically, if you take 100 measures, initially 80% of the measures will be red. So if we're using Pareto, that kicks in. So 80% of the measures are measures of output. Now in a call center, the average handle time is a measure of output. Abandon rates are measures of outputs. Elapsed time is a measure of output. But how many of the measures that we have are actual measures of outcome, right? Well, it'll only be 20% or thereabouts. And interestingly enough, when organizations move outside in, the number of measures you have reduces significantly. And we'll see this again in a few minutes with the performance landscape. So you reduce the number of overall measures you've got because you're guiding people through the outcome lens. And when you do total all the measures together and you do that color coding again, you do the red, amber, green analysis, you'll find a lot of measures have shifted to become outcomes, so they've gone green. And there's not that many output measures, because if you're measuring the outcome, the output will take care of itself. So case in point is Triple Crown. If we can significantly reduce the number of moments of truth and deliver a successful customer outcome, we reduce the complexity, which improves the efficiency and effectiveness of the organization. Right, we reduce the overall costs. All right, throughput improves, and we've got more resources to do, to put to better, more gainful things. So let's move on with it. Any sort of questions at that point? I just wanted to elaborate on how you get to this and why you would focus on this issue. Is if a very large proportion of time is being spent on doing these sort of things, go and have a look at what's driving the behavior, because clearly we can see from a customer's point of view there. Nothing's been achieved for me, right? So, and yet they have this logo, customer at the heart of everything we do. Now, how often do you hear that as a platitude? Or like in the insurance industry, we're in the business of reducing risk. We're in the business of peace of mind. And you go, so how many of your measures are actually aligned with peace of mind? So the question I asked here is, how many measures are actually aligned to put the customer at the heart of everything that you do? And they go, oh, no, you don't understand. That's a vision missiony thing. And you go, yeah, but that's not connected with the reality then, is it? Because if people are doing suboptimal things on behalf of the customer. So let's have a look at this from the measures point of view. Is the associate, your call then? Yeah, great. You came in less than 3 minutes. Quality on the call, I could tell. Yes, you were smiling all the way through that call. That was a wonderful, wonderful call that you did there. You followed the script magnificently. Now, from a management point of view, your numbers look great. You're keeping your average handle time down to less than 3 minutes. Very few abandon rates. You're right first time answering the customer's query. They had a query. You dealt with it. Brilliant. So that's another check mark in the box, another tick in the box. However, even though we're doing all the sort of things around quality, call, volumes, from a customer's point of view, nothing's been achieved for me. All right. I'm even more frustrated now that I can't leave you and I'm going to incur some charges. And you're creating more work for yourselves by sending me a settlement email and letter. What's that about? Why can't we just close the account now? Right. Well, sir, we don't really want you to leave. And a lot of our measures are about trying to retain you now. So we're going to put you in the retention department, and they're going to try and keep you. They're going to try and bribe you to stay for another 12 months. Well, how futile is that? If the margins are so small in this type of organization anyhow, why do you want to keep customers who've already, it's like you've decided you're going to end the relationship. It's just a matter of time. Right? It's whether I go now or whether I go in 6 months. I've already decided I'm going. Right? So with that in mind, we can actually begin to sort of say, oh, you've got to shift outside in. So how did that happen by way of this example? So the service center hierarchy. was based around factory, production, processing calls. It was called a call center. Well, let's shift the thinking there and create a customer experience center, right? And the alignment now is around the successful customer outcomes. So as we can see, the measures there, achievement of purpose, alignment to the SEO. Make sense? The case study itself goes back, as you can see, probably 15 years. But alarmingly, you will still go into organizations who are still doing things very much this way. And the proof of the pudding is have a look at the key performance indicators. And if most of the measures on there are measures of output, you've got you've got the problem, the nub of the problem. And no matter how much you talk about customer experience, outside in, you know, looking to the future, aligning with customer centricity, if the measures keep pulling you back to suboptimal behaviors, then you customer experience thinking, advanced process management thinking, enterprise architecture thinking from the outside in will fail. You know, it's destined to. So the other analogy there is one of the little videos we do is we talk about duck theory. Any of us remember duck theory? Right, that one with James does it very well, where he talks about the picture of the duck. Customer experience is the soft, fluffy bit on the surface. The actual systems and processes are the legs below the waterline paddling away. Right? The water that the duck is living in is the ecosystem, right? And all three of those need to be in harmony. You know, there's no point in having poisonous water and the best processes and the best customer experiences in the world if ultimately the duck's going to die. So this is about the ecosystem. This is about the very things that cause our behaviors to be the way they are. So when we're thinking about, you know, did it work for them? Yep. Brings it up to date, that deck. And as I say, I brought the deck up to date. This one was an older version of it. But in terms of the SCOC needs, they had some make it convenient, make it simple, make it fast, you know, make it right. And then underneath that, that was the first iteration. And the one-liner was still about, remember they started out as a credit card company and wanted to be a bank. They've now progressed that much further. And also those SCOCs have been smartified. So make it convenient. Well, how do you define convenient? Well, can we use the CX6 for that? Yeah, again, we're going to have a look at the sample of CX6 again. You'll recall James's video around measuring each moment of truth, each experience in the context. Is it simple? Is it fast? Is it deliverable? Is it achievable? And all those other things. So all these measures have now evolved to meet those criteria. So that was an overview of Capital One. So let's stop sharing that. Any questions on that mini case study? Right. And it's the sort of thing, don't use that version, use the updated version, which is going to be in your decks. I don't know why. I had a systems crash last night. So when you get a systems crash, of course, some of the things that you were relying on didn't get saved. So that's where we were. So I'm switching to the main deck now. So we should be able to see an orange splash screen again, which says just measurement this time. Can we all see that? Yep, fantastic. So I'll make no excuses here. This deck is a subset of the decks that we teach at the master's level when we're creating dashboards. And the reason for that is that people will get hung up on having one measure of success. So whether we're talking about net promoter score or customer satisfaction matrices or even customer effort score, when we're thinking about those sort of things, oops, sorry, change my deck again. So when we're thinking about those sort of things, is how do we move the dial for the organization? So that's what this is about. So here we go again. No presentation would be correct without having Steve Jobs or Einstein in there, right? So I've got to think of some sort of new inspirational guys. The whole point of this thing I'm doing on Thursday, which is innovating innovation, is let's bring it up to speed. And whilst we're still using the innovation approach, which was designed within Apple originally, that of itself is evolving. So what we wanted to do is introduce that to people who are not in necessarily the process or customer experience world. And one of the reasons for doing it in an Aussie friendly time as well is frequently, for some reason, Australia is very innovative in its ideas, but like with broadband, has difficulty in actually implementing them. Well, fundamentally, I think it comes down to the measurement systems. They're still trying to sweat the assets of their original investment for broadband, right? Rather than sort of saying, okay, well, countries like Kenya are going 6G. Right. Some of us are thinking, when we're going to get those 5G masts installed? And people are talking about 6G, and you go, it doesn't exist yet, does it? And they go, no, there are people who are developing that technology now on the backbone of 5G. And yet, in some countries, we're still working at a 3G pace. Well, doesn't seem to hold water, does it? And it's the measurements. It all hangs around the measurement system. So let's have a look. So the customer performance landscape will be part of this measurement thing. And let's skip through these. Now, another Y4 slide. Some of us will recall this. 2016-17, Tesla were the top in terms of net promoter score. Dun, dun, dun. You know, one question rules them all on a scale of 1 to 10, right? And of course, net promoter score produces analyses like on the bottom left there is, of the people who voted for you, what was the percentage of people who voted 8, 9, or 10, where 10 is absolutely brilliant? And what was the percentage of people who voted less than that? And as you can see, Tesla were top of their game, right? They won the customer satisfaction survey in 2016 and 17, with those results ahead of Porsche and Audi and Toyota. What an incredible experience. We should all give ourselves a bonus. And therein lies the problem. If you bonus people for improving their NPS score, they will gamify it. Right. So the little tale I tell around that, it was from Ford Motor Company and automotive is not a good place to be talking about at the moment. Somebody shared a figure with me yesterday, and due to the COVID-19 crisis, sales compared with this time last year are running at 7%. Imagine what that's just done to the automotive industry. The whole supply chain around automotive has just stalled. It's just dead in the water.
It's cheaper.
Conversely, the areas which are being more successful now are food companies, right? And we're working with one particular client who is trying to find additional storage for all this meat product that they've got, right? Which they need to put into freezers fairly quickly because they've run out of storage capacity because there's such a demand. They're having to fill the supply chain in ways like never before. Pharmaceutical, not surprisingly.
Toilet paper.
Good one, Sally. And utility companies. Toilet paper, no. Those utility companies are seeing a boom at the moment because if you think of the shift of the demographic to most people, not most people, a lot of people working at home, then the use of services, the water, the electricity, the gas services has increased phenomenally. So I don't know if in your world, Raj, you get involved in any of that sort of backwash from that demand.
No, absolutely. I was also going to add, people have realized how much work the government really does for a change.
Yeah, there you go, you see. So they're all getting pats on the back now as well. So it's not just the health services, you know. Anyhow, automotive, dead in the water at the moment. However, back in 2016-17, Tesla were top of the tree as far as NPS was concerned. However, interestingly enough, at the same time, they were also experiencing, they were also experiencing an increase in customer complaints. And we may have seen this in the press running through, you know, there was like comments where people were having delays in service times, delays in delivery of updated software to keep the cars running and all that sort of a thing. So why was that? Well, it's because the NPS score isn't connected with the reality of what's going on in the organization. And they had, in fact, the team who were running the NPS score gamified the system. And back in 2017-18, Tesla laid off the whole marketing department and their whole financial accounting department for mismanagement around not connecting to customer success. That shows how critical it is. So if you hire in some bright, sparky people who can then say, let's link the improvement of customer service to our bonus system, right? So what was happening there? What was the fundamental? Right. Well, I can go into a lot of detail about it, but I'm not going to. But the fundamental was they were only asking customers that had already reported that they'd had a great service. So as you're leaving the showroom, what was the service like? Hey, it was fantastic. I'll tell you what, in a couple of days, you're going to get a survey. It'd be really nice if you could acknowledge that fantastic service by giving us like a 9 or a 10. That would be phenomenal. If you're leaving the showroom and you say, You would just service your car. What's your service been like? It was bloody awful. It took an age to get booked in. Then you didn't have the part, and then you said, oh, I'm really sorry about that. We'll try to fix that next time. Bye. Have a nice day. That person didn't get surveyed. Why would you survey somebody who's going to give you a bad score and then might prevent you from winning a bonus?
It's exactly the same thing, Steve, with online shopping. So we bought a piece of equipment at the start of the whole COVID story, and they keep on asking us for feedback. And the most recent email was, if anything's untoward or not to your satisfaction, please reply to this email. Otherwise, can you give us 5 stars on the website?
Oh dear. And that is so blatantly, you know, perverse behavior, isn't it? And the worst thing about it is, especially with NPS, there's agencies out there that you can outsource your NPS surveys to. So they only get paid if they collect NPS surveys. So they're not bothered about the score. They just want to collect the surveys. But by definition, the organization's bothered about the score. So, well, can we sort of not count those things? And then if we had Bain and Co in the room now, they'd be arguing the toss. Well, that's the mismanagement of NPS. And we go, correct, that is. It's a total mismanagement of NPS. But NPS per se, give me a subjective feeling for how we performed on the scale of 1 to 10. Well, if you ask me today, what day is it today?
You can see how you're feeling.
Yeah, it's how you're feeling. If you ask me on a Monday, I'll give you a 5. You ask me on a Friday, exactly the same service, I'll give you an 8. Right. Why is that? Well, because I feel differently about it. Well, how subjective is that? Was go, yeah, but it's an indicator. No, it's not an indicator. If your sample size is less than 1%, right? How can that be an indicator for the other 99? So I'm not sort of dissing NPS just for the sake of it. What I'm saying is that that measurement system was never designed to be customer centric. It was designed to tell us as an organization, how do we think we're doing, and can we bonus ourselves for it? Right. So if you connect the bonus from NPS, you go, well, we're going to get a more realistic score. Yes, but it's still very subjective. Can't we get more scientific about this? So the whole aspect of doing this is to try to get more scientific. And of course, one of the ways that we've all been introduced to think about this is through the performance landscape. So just a quick refresh. Sorry, question there?
Sorry, Steve, I just had a question now that we are on the topic of NPS. So I've done my NPS 2 certification around 2014, and I kind of agree with what you're saying, in spite of being NPS 2 certified, because I've never been able to marry it well with the customer centricity and experience. But I have a problem here, which probably if the group can help me with is, see, we all understand because we are the customer experience guys, right? That, I mean, we are able to relate, but wherever you go, I mean, outside the customer experience domain, anyone and everyone just considers NPS as the metric when it comes to measurement. So, I mean, is there a way, if somebody has been able to crack it, how to, make them understand that maybe that's not the only sweet spot, or maybe there is something else that we should look at? I would love to hear some views on that.
This deck will give you the answer to that question before anybody else chips in, because it goes through the creation of a dashboard, which you'll see, Shandon, when we do the detailed sessions with you in a few weeks' time. We spend more time on the dashboard than we're going to do today, because most everybody else on the call at some stage has gone through the creation of the dashboard. Now, the way I play that when I go into an organization, and we've just done this with an organization in Africa at the moment, is start the dialogue with and this might sound a dangerous territory to go into, start the dialogue around key performance indicators and how we measure success. Your eyes will get drawn immediately to how are they measuring customer success. And immediately they're measuring using things like CSAT and NPS. What you want to do is you should be able to, if those things were working, demonstrate a correlation between the performance of the organization and the customer success score. If you can't see that correlation, then you've got a Tesla moment. You've got a disconnect for some reason. You might not know the reason why until you do your root cause analysis, but there's a disconnect between the reality of what we're doing and the perceptions the customers are giving us, right? So that's the first point. And where I had those discussions in organizations is with the chief finance officer, because the person who's going to drive the performance discussion is this, is that department, is the accounting department. Right? And being able to demonstrate to them there are more scientific measures of success that you could be using that will correlate with the performance of the organization. And not only correlate with the performance of the organization, the dots are connected right the way through to every single task and activity. And that's an important discussion to have. Now, it may be, if you're talking with CFOs who've got the blinkers over their eyes, who are managing KPIs through a very much an output-based world, you may have to do the legwork beforehand, which sort of demonstrates, and we had to do this. We've spent 6 months doing data collection to create the case around this, which sort of says, your NPS score is going up, your customer satisfaction score is going up, your customer effort score is going in the right direction, but you're actually margins are reducing, your costs are increasing, and your revenue's coming down. How could that be? Because if we were pleasing the customer, shouldn't that the reverse be the case? We go, yeah, that's why we're doing that NPS stuff, is to actually be able to increase our revenue, grow our service. And you go, and yet it's not happening. What's the reason for that? Right. And of course, you may be rattling a few cages along the way, so be politic about it. But at the same time, if you get the data to demonstrate that, you're doing really well in terms of customer feedback, customer scoring, and yeah, you spent a ton of money in outsourcing this to a really good research company, and Qualtrics are doing a fantastic job in collecting, no, not dissing Qualtrics, anybody who's on the call, but all these agencies are doing a fantastic job collecting your scores and helping you get into that sort of top 10. How does that play out in terms of shareholder value? Well, it should be increasing shareholder. You say, yes, it should, but it's not. Why not? Well, there's some things behind the system there. So this part of the deck, which I'm not going to go through the full thing, there's like 80 pages to this, but have a look offline, and your actual exercise this week is to familiarize yourself with some of these measures, because next week we will have the discussion about some of these measurement systems that we're going to talk about now. But yeah, quite right, Shandon. And again, it's like, people will say to me, Steve, you're from the process world and you're one of the co-founders of business process management, the whole idea and ethos behind it. You've left that behind. You go, no, we haven't. It's evolved. You need to evolve NPS. You need to evolve CSAT. You need to move it to the next level. So it is aligned with customer success. So those organizations who, of course, we talk about all the time, who are achieving those success have done precisely that. So they're not using what they would call subjective measurement systems. They're getting more scientific about it. Right? So that's some of the areas we're going to cover now. So thanks for the prompt, Shandon. Any other questions there?
Steve, just wanted to add, I just shared a video, which I really love, from James about the customer conspiracy and NPS. And
yep.
I mean, I like to play that just to put in context for the people who are indeed always telling me, yeah, NPS is, it's very. So I just play that, and then we start thinking exactly what about Steve mentioned about, okay, how do we can look at our reality and try to BAs and try to remove the BAs and everything from the measurement.
Yeah. And that's so true, Tanguy. Is that the one that he did in Iceland a few years ago?
Exactly. I mean, yeah. I just keep repeating, looking at it because it's so good. So.
Yeah, it is. It is very good. He would probably, if he was on the call now, and he can dial into these things, he would probably say, stop using that one. He wasn't in the best physical stage no, he is now, but he wasn't then. So if you actually look at him, he looks like Mr. Humpty Dumpty on the stage there. But yeah, he makes those points very well, and then he uses one of his own examples. There are some more updated things. So he's got the Roxy thing that those guys who did the ACXS. We've got the return on experience investment. So Shandon, that's something that you'll be able to watch that video after we've finished this session. It'll be in the week 3 materials. And he's cut that out specifically for you guys. And then when you get through to the end of it, as Lyle was saying, there's a calculation you can do. And while some of the data in there might not be as firm as you'd want it to be, it gives you a much better indicator in terms of the effort we're putting into customer experience. Are we getting a return on it? And that plays into that sort of CFO mindset, the Chief Finance Officer mindset, the people who are looking after the purse strings, because they can use that as a valid instrument. And whilst it's not as scientific as we would like at the moment, it's significantly more scientific than some of the flaky measures that are out there. And Shandon, I'm not seeming to diss NPS. What I'm saying is that, you know, when that was created, it was created with good intent, and it removed all those surveys we used to have to do. But as times evolved and customers have become who they are now, have become enlightened, it's not sufficient anymore by itself. It could be used in collaboration with other measures, and definitely if there's a correlation between the organization performance and the NPS score improving, then, you know, we have connected the dots, but more often than not, they haven't been.
Just one thing, Steve, I think another problem, again, related to NPS, if I may ask. So I think when you talk of customer experience, the only metric which currently is used to measure or compare your performance with outside world is NPS.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I get that we can look at, if at all the management is open to change, and we can look at matrices other than NPS, or maybe also incorporate NPS into it. But NPS in itself has a lot of ways of conducting and getting the score, which can be frankly played around very easily.
Yeah.
Right? And like you rightly said, there are various days wherein you might score a 5, and then the other day you might score somebody 8. So how do we? So my bigger point was, one is, of course, from internal management perspective, you get a metric which helps you relate to your goals or your KPIs or your business strategy. The other question was, which you've already answered, thanks for that. The other point was that how do we also ensure that if at all there is a metric which is required to be taken up by the management, which also helps the management compare their performance with their competitors, what can that metric be if not NPS?
Right. Some of the guys know how I'm going to answer that question. Is I'm going to refer you back to the successful customer outcome canvas and the SMART measures that you create in box number 7. Use that in alignment to what it said on your outside in strategic matrix in terms of what business are you in. So say you're working with a particular organization, and they would say formerly a utilities company, and they said they're in the industry of utilities. They redefine themselves and say, now we're in the business of always on. So here we go again. Plug for the... They redefine themselves and say, now we're in the business of always on. So this was, as you know, the very large utility company in Eastern Europe, Apanova, a subsidiary of the world's largest utility company, Veolia, right? They said we're in the business of always on, right? So we've got a set of measures, and we've redefined our business. Right, now who can we go and benchmark ourselves against with these measures as an always on business, not as a utility company? We don't want to go to other utility companies. We're already the biggest in the world anyhow. And all we're going to do is get to be the best utility company. We want to contrast ourselves and compare ourselves and learn from companies who are in the business of always on. Well, who could that possibly be? Well, you don't have to go too far to actually start thinking about health services, acute care and things like that, which is very appropriate at the moment, isn't it? So if we go and contrast how we do things with how they do things, could we learn from that? So how do they do, for instance, customer onboarding? Well, they have this triage system where you come in and they sort and sift the more acute cases from the less acute cases, and then accordingly will prioritize the acute cases. Oh, right, okay. How could we bring that into our onboarding of new customers? How could we prioritize the work that we're doing? Right, now let's contrast their measures with our measures for doing that in terms of the successful customer outcome canvas. So the guys will know that all those measures then plug into what we're going to talk about next, which is the performance landscape. And the performance landscape is a means of literally connecting all the things that we're doing in terms of tasks and activities and customer interactions, those moments of truth, right the way through to the successful customer outcome and right the way down into our reward system. Right. So let me show you an example for those folks who recall doing this. There is an example. All right. And I'm actually thinking as I'm looking at this, Lyle, this looks like a wall in Melbourne. Or is it in America, that one? I know we did some videos when we were doing work with one of the organizations Lyle was in the past.
Yeah, the plug on the wall is an American plug, so
Is
it's
it
not
right?
relevant.
Okay, all right. But this is what a live build of a performance landscape looks like. So let me describe what you've got here. You've got the moments of truth that we talk about a lot, customer interactions, right? Which equates to this model here, the red line. The blue ones are the internal interactions, handovers, sometimes called breakpoints, sometimes called internal moments of truth, right? Beneath here, we've got some of the rules that underpin those things. Then we've got tasks and activities at this level, the yellow post-it notes, okay? And then above that, we have outputs. So activities produce outputs, right? And Shandon, from your point of view, you're going to be building these in that piece of work you're going to be doing in a couple of weeks' time. So if this seems obscure at the moment, don't worry. Everybody else has been through it, sometimes 3 or 4 times. So, oh no, another performance landscape. I don't know if I can stand the stress. And now, typically, as we've already said, the key performance indicators are frequently at this output level, right? And people stop there. So one of the examples I prompted you to when you're looking at week 3 is the story about General Motors, which I think I've already told in the first couple of weeks. But essentially, they were going into bankruptcy proceedings, and whether in the factory, all the production measures were telling them they're in the top quartile of the car industry, top quartile of automotive. And so you say, well, how could there be that mismatch between, on the one hand, reporting we're in the top quartile, and on the other, we're financially bust? What's the difference? Well, they'd stopped measuring at the output level. All the production measures were at the output level. And when they were doing the Shingo prize and all that sort of stuff, they were using outputs as the key metric. Well, if you measure yourself against other people's outputs, in other words, how fast are we actually producing a car? Oh, wow, we're in the top 10% in the world. That's fantastic. How great are we actually spraying cars? Oh, brilliant. We're really good at doing that. And quality job, you know, what's quality look like? All those sort of things. Those are all output measures. And if they're not connected with the outcomes you're trying to achieve, the business outcomes and the key customer outcomes, you will fail. And part of people going, oh, it must have been genius for General Motors to discover the problem. Well, as John Core, who's, some of you know, was the co-founder of the BP Group, he was a Chapter 11 specialist. And he was out in Detroit, and we were having this discussion. And I said, well, you know, what's the conclusion? And he said, General Motors got really good at making cars nobody wanted anymore. Now, if they'd have connected to the outcome, now what's the business outcome, Shandon, of actually making a car quickly? What's the business outcome?
Sorry, sales and revenue?
Yeah, you sell the car. Yeah. Sorry, I've got an alarm going off in the background. Let me just get this alarm. Must be telling me I should be somewhere else. Exciting. One of the vagaries of still working in this wonderful open plan office that you can see behind me. So yeah, exactly right, Shandon. The business outcome is we sell the car. And what was happening was they got really good at making cars and nobody was buying them. So obviously the revenue was falling away. And even though the costs were coming down because they were doing all the production line techniques that, you know, they'd lean themselves out. They were winning awards all over the world for the best lean performance. And that's the other thing as well. You go to conferences and you look at some of the people who are actually presenting at conferences. Do they ever mention the word customer? That's the only reason why we're working, is they pay our salaries, they pay our wages, right? In Sally's terms, it's the citizens, or it's the, you know, it's the people, it's the voters, right? And it doesn't matter where you are. If you're in public administration, it's the citizen, it's the taxpayer, right? And how much attention is actually paid to that in the day-to-day running of businesses? So what the performance landscape gives us the capability to do is to literally say, okay, from this moment of truth, doing these tasks and activities, producing this output, which contributes to this outcome, we get to this key customer outcome. So with permission, we've got an example which I'm going to show you in a minute, which is somebody in the supply chain. So we say these performance landscapes go through an evolution. Back in the day, I'm talking 15 years ago, when this concept first came out, it was called the process performance landscape. And this first evolution thing of this landscape is exactly that. It starts with tasks and activities, outputs, business outcomes, key customer outcomes, and successful customer outcomes. However, second evolution then includes 3 more levels below this, which are the digital capability, the mindsets, and the rewards. So we can actually see that's what sits below this is what underpins the whole structure. Now, everything we're talking about with metrics has to do with the rewards. And as I often say, I'm quoted as saying, is if you pay people for doing dumb stuff, they'll get really smart at it. NPS, right? Average handle times and call centers, all those things, you can get really smart at showing how well you're doing against the measures that you've got, right? And you will gamify the system to demonstrate how smart you are as a team, as a department, as a division. And if you recall the Rubik's Cube exercise where we talked about the red, the yellow, the green, the blue, right? You could be the red department, Shandon, and I could be the green department. We'll say, okay, take all your red department guys and try to optimize how many red squares you get on one side of the Rubik's Cube. And you might do a fantastic job and get 9 squares. Meanwhile, you're happily screwing up the green department, the yellow department, and everybody else. Not on purpose, but their objectives aren't the same as yours. So you then pass the Rubik's Cube to me, and I go, oh, hang on a minute. That's wrong. We haven't got enough of our colours on the side. So we'll play with the Rubik's Cube again. Now, unless we're all on the same page and all working to optimize the colours on all sides of the Rubik's Cube, we end up with the mess. Right? So that's very much about how the reward system tends to work. It rewards people for doing things rather than delivering things. So that's the difference between the output and the outcome. So that is a sort of fundamental level. But let me, so now this was Australia. I remember this one there. So I think that was in Brizzy. So that was, it's a mini video when you get the PowerPoint version of this, and you'll see that actually operating. These guys building the performance landscape. So they've done the work over here where they've gone from current state to future state. And they were using blue moments of truth for some reason there. Transferred those 3 moments of truth over here onto the performance landscape, which you can see just underneath the guy's hand there, those blue ones. And they're beginning to build out, you know, what should be the tasks and what should be the activities that deliver those moments of truth. And it is an iterative process. It's not a one and done. So that's the diagrammatic version of it. Now I want to move into the example. Now you go about filling this in is step 1, identify the moments of truth. Step 2, identify the handovers, and so on like that. So in the master's programs, this is exactly what we do. Is by the time we get to level 4, people are actually creating these things. The difficulty people have is when they get to number 10, 11, and 12, digital capability, mindsets, and rewards. What we find is from a current state perspective, we have a lot of technology out there, a lot of IT. But if we try to do one of these in the current state and connect that IT through to the SCO, frequently it doesn't. So we have one stark example though of a company in Sweden who were about to deploy SAP. And our partner consultancy out in Sweden, we're doing the work. They're SAP implementers, so we know that's not outside in, but let's forgive them for that for the moment. They were working with SAP, and they were given a 9-month program to actually do the pre-work for how do we integrate SAP into our existing systems. And what the consultancy said, look, we want to use the CEM method to do this. And they said, well, what does that imply? And they said, well, within a week, we'll have an actionable plan where 50% of the actions are implementable in the following month. And they go, well, no, we've sold the client on 9 months pre-work here. Why would you do that in a month? You know, because like we've sold them on the scope of the project and the depth of the project. And, you know, that's going to prejudice our revenue. So, well, tell you what, if you don't like it, we'll carry on doing it the traditional way. And we still have 8 months and 3 weeks to do it the traditional way. But if you do like it, we could renegotiate with the customer, give them a better result much more quickly. And albeit the revenue might not be the same, the actual kudos associated with being able to do that will let you move across many other organizations in a similar way. And Well, we don't believe it, but go on, give it a go. So they spent 5 days doing the workshops, and they actually built this for current state. And I'm not an advocate of doing that because it's a political nightmare, because what they demonstrated was that the 21 IT systems at the number 10, the digital capability level, 17 did not contribute to the SCL.
Wow.
So what do you do with those 17 systems? Switch them off, right? Immediately you switch them off, you've reduced the complexity. The other aspect of that was, now you're only left with 4 systems. That is a lot easier to integrate with in terms of data modeling, data management, data migration, and all those other things we have to do when we're actually deploying enterprise-wide solutions than it was trying to do it against that monster of 21 systems. This is a relatively simple organization we were talking about. So if you need to be draconian in situations where you need to get costs out quick and stuff like that, this is one of the mechanisms to use, because within a week, you'll be able to establish where all the redundancy is. But you will not make many friends along the way, because that redundancy, of course, is in people's jobs, IT systems, and the infrastructure of the organization. So that's why I say really be cautious if you're going to step into that territory to try and do this for current state. In future state, it's great, because just as you saw with the example of the guys doing it there, they'd reduced down from 30 moments of truth down to 4. So when we're at the level of actually creating number 1, the customer interactions, there's 4 moments of truth in there. Now, what internal interactions do we need to support those? What are the business rules that underpin them? And then we can work our way up. And then subsequently say, and what IT should support those customer interactions, the internal interactions, and the business rules at the number 10 level. So this is your sort of, if you like, cookbook way of building that. And we typically, as you know, guys, who've done all the training, will spend a day building this, right? And it's a very valuable exercise because it can demonstrate to every level of the organization. Subsequently, this can become a strategic toolkit where you define at levels 7, 8, and 9, for instance, the business outcomes we want to achieve next year. And then you cascade down and work out, well, what outputs will we need? What activities does that imply? Can we break the activities out into a number of different tasks? Therefore, what customer interactions will we have to deliver that successful customer outcome? I've seen this built as well from starting with digital capability. Right, okay, what in a year from now, our strategic objective from an IT perspective is to be totally online, totally virtual, and all the rest of it. Okay, well, what moments of truth will we need to deliver that, and then build it from the middle up. Working with HR departments and people departments, you could start with number 12, the reward system. So this is just a prescription for the classic way we train it, 1 to 12. But you can actually start anywhere on the CPL. So that's that. So there's another comprehensive example for you to have a look at offline. I'm going to rattle through a few slides now because I'm aware of time constraints. But offline, have a look at these. If anything is unclear, let's get on a one-on-one or a group call. But you can see exactly on the left-hand side, there we have the successful customer outcome, the key customer outcomes, and so on, going down the left-hand side. And then the post-it notes represent all those elements of the performance landscape. So let's give you an example. So this is from B2B space, okay? So it's a case study of the before and after and developing a CPL as a consequence of that. So this organization, they operate in the middle of a supply chain, making parts for farming equipment, parts for big machinery, big road machinery, and so on. So 28 moments of truth, okay? So I've just drawn out in a very simple way so that people can see it. Every moment of truth starting with the word customer, and you can see it's all from that perspective. They did the innovation approach. So looking at those 28 moments of truth, what are they? And then what's the action to eliminate that moment of truth? And then the column which says SC or N and A is the service cost and revenue. And then if you look at the key in the bottom right, does that meet a need and is it achievable? So those were the plus factors. So I've identified, and Shandon again, you'll get the wherewithal to be able to do this within the program. But just for the sake of getting it to a measurement point of view, you then identify which is the action to eliminate the moment of truth, creating the greatest value. So if we highlight those, we could see there's 4 come out of there. Use customer facilities as distribution warehouses. Oh, right, so we get them to store the stuff. Yeah, that's good. Eliminate rush surcharge. So they had a punitive charge for customers who wanted the job done rushed. But because of the sign-off procedure that sat behind the scenes of getting a rush job done, it actually took nearly as long as doing it the classic way, and cost significantly more to air freight things and things like that. Number 16, accept the purchase order at time of need. So let's not wait for the purchase order to come in and then we start acting in it. Let's get proactive around our storage systems and so on. And then number 28, a vendor managed inventory, because that will reduce our overall costs, and that ticks all the aspects of Triple Crown. Improves service, reduces cost, grows revenue, actually meets has no negative effect across the organization, and meets the need. Right. So you can see there's a whole bunch of things on there. So if we took those 4 moments of truth and then crafted a solution which delivered those, what would it look like? So this is what it looks like then in the future state. So what was it, 28 going down to 6? Customer identifies need for a product. Customer walks to the on-site supermarket. So that's a on-screen supermarket where they can drag and drop products and stuff, rather like the Amazon store. Customer picks the part, customer notifies X of picked part, customer receives an invoice, and customer sends payment. 5 and 6 have now been rolled together as well. So there's no invoice going anymore, the payment just goes automatically. All right. So that's great. So what does that look like in terms of what we're talking about today, in terms of metrics and building a system which can be reported on at every single level? And what you can see there is the process performance landscape for the future state. So the moment of truth level, the 4 new moments of truth, in the context of what do we need to do internally, handovers, what are the business rules that underpin that, and then the associated tasks, activities, outputs, you can see it building. And they're in the business of confidence. So everybody in their supply chain, including the end customer, should feel confident that everything that's happening here is delivering its purpose. So 28 moments of truth down to 4, and then this process performance landscape. Why is it a process performance landscape? Because at this stage, it didn't have the other 3 levels below it: digital, the mindsets, and the rewards. Those are the other 3 levels that would sit below the green line, which is the business rule line. So that's one of the key mechanisms, as we all know. For some of us, that's a reminder. So what would you do in next steps in terms of implementing it? Well, create the future state, validate all levels, and then prepare the migration. So that's the future state. Validate all levels. So you can look at the logic of these, and each one of those is a measurable. Right? You can then apply that logic across all these different levels. Then you prepare the migration program, and as the guys do in the CPP Masters, is create the customer performance landscape. Now, says he with a few minutes left, this is the pack I want you to review offline. I'm just going to dive into a couple of places on it. So there's a whole bunch of different measures. Now, particularly to Shandon's point, is how do you justify doing anything from a moving from a lot of moments of truth down? We have this thing called the disruption factor. Some of us will recall a few years ago, it used to be called the points of failure factor. The reason it's called the disruption factor is that anything above 13 moments of truth in any process is disruptive to our organization, and anything less than 12 is disruptive to the competitors or is better for our organization in terms of performance. So Sally, in your world, you don't have any competitors as such, but in terms of helping the organization achieve a lower cost.
War.
Oh God, don't put that on our table as well. We've had enough this year already. So, so the disruption factor is one of the measures. But if I step back just from that, there are 21 specific measures in an outside-in world. So to your point, Shandon, have a review of this. It probably needs you and I to have a chat offline as well. But you will be going through this in detail, and it's a day's work to actually work through all these things. But you can see some of the things there is proactive reactive index. I'll look at that in a moment. What's the risk element associated with the moments of truth? What's the cost of achieving an outcome? What's the change index? So how frequently are we innovating and upgrading? Let's get down to number 10, 4Es, the CX rating. There's a whole mini deck inside of this deck which talks about measuring not the performance of the associate in dealing with a customer or the salesperson, and not the view of the customer, but let's measure the interaction itself. So what does that look like, and how could we do it? And that thing's called the 4Es. We have, dropping down further down the list, at number 20, the CX6, which is the thing that we talk about on the Accredited Customer Experience Specialist Program. We'll also talk about it in the context
Sorry,
of...
Steve.
Yes?
It's Sash. Is that ease as opposed to east?
Ease, yes, ease.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
super.
And
Thank you.
let's drop down to that one. So let me just step out the pack for a minute, and then we can show you what the 4Es are. 4Es. Oops, a bit big again. So this specifically answers the question about what can replace NPS, CSAT, CES, all these other acronyms that we've got, and it's that we refer to it as the CX rating, customer experience rating. And what it's about is the 4Es. This drew out of automotive, interestingly enough, is it's all about connecting the dots in the same way the performance landscape does, and measures the 4Es are expectations, encounter, experience, and emotion. And what we want to measure for each interaction is when the customer is having that interaction with us, and again, it could be a corporate, it could be a singular entity, were the expectations already in place? Or is the customer learning now that there's no way we can deliver this product or a service in the way that they want it? So the expectations and wants and needs were misaligned. The encounter, is the encounter being actively managed? The experience and so on. So let me just walk through this mini deck, which is in the main deck. The whole objective is to get to the successful customer outcome. So how does it work? Well, there's, in terms of expectation, there's elements to it which are like confidence, intention, probability, and reliance. Right? In terms of experience, contact, know-how, and maturity. And then, how we do this, so let's take a call center as an example, and we can juxtapose this with the classic case study we talked about earlier on, is we're not measuring the performance of the customer service agent, and we're not asking the customer, how did we perform? What we're doing here is we're measuring the interaction. So if I looked at the interaction I'm having with this customer real time, you know, and as you know, we quote Disney, 100% of interactions measured 100% of the time. That's how you know whether you're performing well or not. It's not like less than 1% on a scale of 1 to 10 on a Friday afternoon. So that, well, the CX range of what the customer service agent would do is say, okay, were the customer's expectations set? Did they have confidence we were doing the right thing? Did we have the right intent in actually meeting the expectations? What was the probability we could deliver against that expectation? And how reliable was that expectation? And on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you score this interaction? Right. Now, of course, that is still subjective, but what you're seeking to do is collect the data from 100% of your interactions 100% of the time. So what we have on, say for instance, you're a customer service agent, a little window pops up, and when we're training on this, they'll just start with 1E. Then they'll do 2Es, 3Es, 4Es eventually. And there's a little pop-up comes up on the screen, and we can wed this to any of the systems that they've got. And what it does is then sort of say, okay, you're 2 minutes into the call, our expectations being met on a scale of 1 to 10. And you might think, customer's a bit antsy, and I'm having to navigate across 2 or 3 systems and so on. So I'm going to give it a 5. So we're getting all this data all coming in from all our associates about these scores, and we can draw the bell curve. We can look at what is our mean and mode averages in that bell curve. And why are we only scoring expectations on average 5? What's with that? Because ideally we want to be up at near 9 or 10. And the answers then when you do the root cause might come back is, well, the challenge we have with expectations is the salespeople are telling the customers something. They're coming on the call with an expectation which is way beyond the ability of our product or service to deliver, for instance. Secondly, when I'm dealing with the customer to actually answer that query about the new product, I've got to navigate 3 screens, right? So the question then becomes, okay, so if we get the sales force to stop making promises we can't meet, yeah, and merge these 3 screens into 1 screen, would that cause you to score the interactions higher? And of course the answer is yes. Yeah, I'd probably give it a 7 or an 8, right? So it becomes immediately actionable. You know, and we have examples of this now, which are going into the new book, where people have implemented it and they'll take action in the moment when they'll see something going wrong. So the live dashboard is reporting back, how are we doing on the 4 E's? And then immediately we say, hang on a minute, what's happening with emotion? And, you know, the emotion score has gone down from averaging 6.5 down to 3.5 in the last hour. What's happening? You know, what's going on down there? You know, if you don't already know, that's a, you know, a call to arms. Is let's go and find out. And it might be something's happened in the marketplace. It might be some of your systems have gone down. It could be a whole number of different things. But it allows the senior management team, the leadership team, to be understanding what's happening real time. It also engages employees from an employee experience point of view. Because if you think you're not scoring yourself, so you're not under the cosh to be on getting your average handle time down to less than 3 minutes, because that improves our capacity management system. Well, so what? You know, does that help the customer? Well, we don't know. And the customer's not going to give me a bad score, right? Because I'm going to be aligned to the outcomes. You focus on this allows you to improve the actual work that's being done, the interactions, so whether they're automated or whether they're actual physical. It doesn't have to, I use the call center example because we used that case study earlier on, but it could be in any environment where we have moments of truth. You can use the 4 E's. And that's one mechanism. It's freeing up our people to do more of the things. So that's how we actually implement it. But if you wanted to have a model for it, this is how we train on it. So we introduce one of these first and get people familiar with one of the E's. Then the following week, the second E, the third E, the fourth E. So by the end of a month, you're deploying the 4 E's. And you might just do it against one type of interaction you have with customers to get people familiar with it. But after a while, you've got everybody in a customer experience center. That's usually the starting point for this stuff, because that's where we have the most demotivation, I want to put it that way, whereby improving people's outlook and giving them a better way of actually improving their environments, and they can see change coming in, which is beneficial both for themselves as employees and the customers. We're all on the same page then. So let's do a time check. I'm aware I've got 5 minutes left, and that's just one of these 21 elements. So what I would like you to do for the exercise this week is go back through, and we'll do the first part of next week, revisiting this again and answer questions that might surface in the meantime. But have a look through these different ones and go and have a look at the work we've prepared around Roxy and James's explanation of that. Go and download that template, see what that sort of tells you in terms of how do we justify a return on this experience? How do we justify the investment that we're going to make? And have a look at some of these. What I say to you guys is, I have favorites on here. You know, I have a passion for doing the proactive reactive index. So if we step back up to that for a moment, let's go right back up to the top, which is a very easy one to tabulate. Come out of it. Don't want to keep you beyond time. So I'll scan back to the top. So proactive reactive index. I mean, this is a very powerful one, especially for process-based people. Right? So what do I mean by that? Well, we can have a look at the distribution of our moments of truth and our internal interactions, and then do a calculation for how proactive or reactive the process or experience is. So if we have a look at this example, we've got a current state set of moments of truth with their associated handovers. And if we use that formula, so I'll take the first moment of truth, we can see there's one handover precedes the moment of truth, and there's 3 handovers in total in association with that relationship with the first moment of truth. And that gives us a PRI, proactive reactive index, of 33. Optimally, it will be 100 every time. So when we move that experience, and we could see across the whole experience, it's less than 30. When we then take that experience and innovate it we might reduce it to say 3 moments of truth. And we can now see that that first moment of truth has 3 handovers in association with it, and they precede the moment of truth itself. So that gives us a PRI of 100. And then again, for the total process/experience, we can do 80, which is significantly better than 29.4. Now, why is that important? Well, the more proactive your processes are, the less they cost to run, the better their service they deliver. So I use PRI as an indicator for current state, future state. Before I even get to future state, I'll do a current state assessment using PRI, come up with a score, and then sort of say, well, 30 is pretty lousy, isn't it? Because that indicates the processes are too complex. We've got a lot of cost buried in there. There's probably a lot of points of failure. So I use it as part of the argument for sort of saying is, I really want to focus on this process, this experience, because I know that's where we're going to get the biggest benefit in terms of Triple Crown, which directly relates back. So any questions on that one? Well, that's a very, very quick overview of that. But if we have a look at the full dashboard, there's 21 measures there plus Roxy. So there's the Roxy sort of video. So we ask people to, in the real world, to go away, as you know, and do the calculations, proactive, reactive index, and so on like that. But what it ends up emerging are dashboards like this. So this is the first time Shandon's seen this dashboard. Oh my goodness me, you've given me so much to think about today. I don't know what I'm going to do. So you can see what we've done is tabulated 7 moments of truth. This was student onboarding for a business school in Canada, for instance. So the onboarding process, receive information packs, complete application. What type of moment of truth was that? Oh, that was a system to person. Who was the owner of that moment of truth? Marketing. Abacus is customer life cycle. And then you'll see the proactive reactive index, which is column 11. You see, we've scored each one of those moments of truth against that thing I've just explained, the PRI. And then you've got other things on here as well. Do we always use all of these? No, we don't. There'll be 2 or 3 measures that you find that are appropriate to the environment that you're working in. That will become your go-to measures that you'll feel really capable of explaining and working with the client, right? As enterprises mature around this space, then they do develop more comprehensive dashboards, and eventually they will embrace all 20 odd of the different measurements. But from a starting point, you might want to pick one measure. And that's why I like the proactive reactive index, because you can move a lot of mountains with that. The disruption factor is another one, but it needs you to be able to calculate more discreetly than using PRI. Other sort of measures which are quite popular for people are the 4 E's, the CX rating, which is the one I just whizzed through, and the CX6, because they're both simple to do. And you don't need a degree in process or experience to actually understand the CX6 especially, right? Is the moment of truth convenient? Is it easy? It says East there. I get where you're coming from there, asking about East. Is it easy? Is it fast? Is it trackable? Is it personalized and predictive? So guys, we've gone through quite a lot today and I'm already over time. Any questions before we close the session? And I'll point you at the material as soon as we've uploaded the video. No?
Steve, will we get access to this deck as well?
Oh, absolutely. You get the, as I was saying earlier on, you get these as PDFs immediately, but also we're putting them into, so as coaches, you get the PowerPoint format. Because what you want to do with this, for instance, is you'll probably think, oh, I only want to use 3 or 4 in this project. So you want to delete all the other slides and then just use the 3 or 4 you're going to use, but you may want to explain them before you use them. And that's the whole idea of giving you that sort of toolkit. So what I will be doing is, for everybody who's participated in the ACX Mentors program, is putting the PowerPoints on a USB stick, which you can see I've already started to do. Right? So we'll put them on USB sticks and then you'll get them dispatched at the same time as the book and the certificate. But meantime, you'll have it as a PDF, okay?
And Steve, can we use any of these for our exercise, like doing it for ourselves?
Oh, please do. And I know you're further ahead than most, Shandon, because you've just come off that other program, the COIM, and having completed that, you then applied your thinking to one of your existing processes and then significantly reduced the moments of truth. You could perhaps take both the current state that you had, which was the past state now, and the future state, which is now the current state, and apply PRI to it, for instance. Just have a look at it through that lens and see what you've got. And if you want to share that back with me, and I can give you some comments and observations and so on.
Okay, I may use about, like you said, not 21, but a few of these.
And again, for looking at the macro justification for investing in customer experience, that the Roxy video. So let me just step out of here as we finally close proceedings. I'll stop sharing the screen again. Remember to do that this time. And then let's get to over here.
And just one more open question or open suggestion for myself. Is there a nice role description? Because I get to choose my role description from next month. So it's
right, okay.
we are creating a innovation hub wherein I'll look after the customer experience. So they have no clue what that means. So
Okay,
it has to mean something to them, and then also saleable, marketable.
A terrific question, and we've gone through that work with a few organisations now over the last couple of years.
Okay.
So I'll give you some thoughts on that next week, and we may do a supplemental session, because I can already see that what I wanted to cover next week is we're going to be like 2 hours is going to turn into 3 or 4. So what I'll probably do is if you've got areas which are your sort of pet questions, something's not being clear, or you want guidance on it, the whole point of this is I'm the mentor of the mentors, if you like. So any questions you've got, throw them at me. And then what we do is we're going to arrange separate sessions which are outside of the ACX mentor session.
No, thank you. Yeah, we'll certainly do that. Yeah.
So the next session will be next week on Tuesday. Unfortunately, it's not going to be an Aussie-friendly time. It's going to be later in your evening, because we've got to get the US people back on board.
Yeah.
Okay. But nevertheless, it will be recorded. So if you can't make the session, then I appreciate that. Keep doing the exercises. Keep the dialogue going. The WhatsApp area, ACX Mentors, is great. So you'll see the conversations happening there. Sometimes you might want to take those offline and just ping me, not directly to the group, but ping me separately. That's perfectly okay. And if you want to get on a call between now and next week, and if you can in 48 hours or so, make the innovation session. What I'll be doing there is going through, as you guys know, how we take our moments of truth in a current state and innovate them to a future state, and what the potential for that is. And I'll actually be talking about PRI in that context as well. And that's only a 45-minute session. It's to warm people up to the Certified Outside In Masters program, basically. Okay, guys.
Sorry, Steve, it's Sash again.
Yes.
Just a quick question. What time is it next week? Just so that we can manage our diaries.
Great. I'll send that to you in the next couple of hours. I need
Please
to
do. Thank
check
you.
with a couple of people over in the States about what their availability is. And as I say, I'm building it around their time for a change. It'll be the first one of the 4 weeks that they've got. But I'll let you know in the next couple of hours. Okay.
And if you could let us know for Thursday as well, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, I'll send you, what I'll do is I'll register you for the webinar. I'll use your email address, and the first thing you'll receive is an email saying you're registered for the webinar. And what that'll do is give you the link for you to be able to sign in. In fact, what I'll do is I'll send that invite to all of you. You don't have to come because it's recorded. But because if I send the invite to all of you, what you can then get is access to the recorded session afterwards.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
More questions?
Okay.
Fantastic. So you finished week 3 or 4. Now that exercise should be, go through the PDF and have a look at it. And some of it is not going to make a lot of sense until we've asked questions about it. So there's certain things in the PRI, risk impact matrix, the Roxy thing, which isn't in that part, but is a separate video, and also the CX6. CX6 is very powerful. Okay. Cheers, guys. Hope to see you
Thanks.
next week. Have a fantastic rest of
Bye-bye.
your evening, afternoon, day, morning, wherever we are in the world. And
All right.
enjoy peace and keep safe. Cheers.
Thanks, Steve. Catch you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
See you
everyone.
all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.